Hello there everyone, I am your host, the Sea Monster, and I welcome you all to my video set for the Year of the Dragon edition of One Monstrous Moment. That's right folks, we have another OMM movement going on headed by the Omniviewer, and this time it is to coincide with not just the release of Godzilla Kong the New Empire, but it is also to coincide with the 70-year anniversary of the Godzilla franchise as a whole, which also happens to be set in a year of the dragon according to the Chinese horoscope. For this particular video, I am going to highlight not necessarily a moment in a Godzilla film, but rather a character and her storyline in a Godzilla film. And this character is none other than Katsura Mafune from Terror of Mechagodzilla, the 15th and final film in Godzilla's Showa era from 1975. This video will be discussing how strong of a character Katsura is, as she, alongside her father, is one who has quite a bit of nuance to her. Nuance which makes her, as I would attest, one of the best characters in the Showa era. Think of this video as being akin to when I talked about Makomore and her journey in Pacific Rim 1 back in my essay video series on Pacific Rim Uprising, only this is a standalone video as opposed to a part of a much bigger video. Well, actually, think of this video as that, and as my hat being thrown into the ring against a notion regarding the Godzilla franchise having only a handful of films that have meat packed in the bones of their stories, as in resonant thematics, multi-dimensional characters, etc., etc. Especially in light of this notion being perpetuated by certain folks out there who have just simply no business making such objectively false claims and statements about Godzilla films in the first place. But let's try not to get too hung up on that, shall we? So with all that out the way, let's get into this one monstrous discussion. Katsura Mafune is the daughter of Dr. Mafune, who, after a near-fatal accident in his laboratory, was resurrected and reshaped by the extraterrestrial simians from the previous film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, into a cyborg intended to be used as a tool for the aliens to control the newly built Mechagodzilla 2, so that they could raze Tokyo to the ground and exact their revenge on humanity. However, despite orders from her father and the simians, she meets with marine biologist Akira Ishinose, who falls for her and eventually becomes the anchor to her own humanity, which remains within her. Even with the simians' brainwashing taken into effect, Katsura eventually breaks away from that psychological hold, and she then realizes that she has to die so that Mechagodzilla can be permanently disabled, and so that the tide of the battle can be irrevocably turned in mankind and Godzilla's favor. And so, despite Ichinose's pleas against it, Katsura takes her own life for the greater good. Katsura Mafune is a tragic figure in every sense of the word. While her father was emotionally manipulated into letting the simians do their work and saving her from certain death, only to do so for ulterior motives, it was she who was the true victim in all of this. Katsura was an innocent, caring girl who was forced to become a means to an end by beings who seek to destroy her world, whose death was the only way to ensure its salvation. She finds herself at a crossroads between her purpose as constructed by the simians and the light within her that ultimately pierces through the simians' brainwashing. Katsura can also be seen as a parallel, albeit not an exact one, to Titanosaurus, the sea creature that was the source of her father's obsession, which became his downfall and resulted in him essentially selling his soul to devils from outer space. Both Katsura and Titanosaurus were gentle beings that were repurposed by unscrupulous individuals into becoming tools for world domination and devastation, and they both ended up paying with their lives for actions which were never truly their fault. Neither of them asked to be used by the simians, nor would they ever consider bathing their hands in the blood of innocent people. Yet both Katsura and Titanosaurus, all the same, became instruments of destruction against their will, or without even realizing what happened to them until it was far too late. Katsura Mafune, as a character, has such a good deal of depth to her, and the fact that the film, even with its short runtime of 83 minutes, was able to pack this much meat to the bones of her storyline, while also having to do the same for other characters throughout the film, and to give us great kaiju action to boot, is very much commendable. Despite its underrated and or overlooked status in the franchise as a whole, Terror of Mechagodzilla ends the Showa era on a somber but fulfilling note, and is a film that does well in encapsulating what makes the Godzilla franchise so resonant. Compelling human storylines with profound messages that help in bolstering the investment one puts into the grand kaiju spectacle. Now sure, watching grand spectacle for the sake of it and not much more isn't necessarily a bad thing in its own right, but to marry that with good storytelling and with characters who bolster said storytelling is something which should be encouraged even in blockbuster cinema. So if one were to ask me, I would recommend looking to the tragic tale of Katsura Mafune, as well as even the greater film of Terror Mechagodzilla which it is told within, as an example of how to do a Godzilla/kaiju story well. And that is why it is what I would consider to be one monstrous moment. And so that just about does it for this short, sweet, but to the point video here. I would like to thank you all very much for watching my contribution to the Year of the Dragon edition of One Monstrous Moment, and I recommend checking out the rest of the playlist for it hosted by the OmniViewer over in his channel or in the search engine. If this video has fancied you fine folks out there, I recommend checking out the rest of my channel and all the other goodies which I have put out thus far, and I hope that this video and more have also been worthwhile enough for you all to follow me for any updates on videos which are to come. So, stay tuned for all that good stuff. With that said, once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.